Well, well, what do we have here? This is probably definitely the fastest car that I've ever had in this garage. Oh my God, another FoxBody, Kyle. There's so many in here. Gina's, my Hemi Fox, the Hemi Fox I built for Colby, and this one, you know what? Also Colby's car. However, this is the first Fox in the garage that has a Ford engine. Yep, you heard it right. That is a Coyote sitting in there. And that not only is a Coyote sitting in there, that is a 2,500, 3,000 horsepower Coyote sitting in there. Now I don't have all the engine specs for you, but I got a couple of things. There is billet aluminum connecting rods in here. So, you know, it's made for the big power. Billet aluminum intake manifold, that's kind of cool. Big forced induction turbo, which we're gonna be taking off. We're gonna be putting one of our True North turbo units on there. If you guys don't already know, I'm part owner of True North turbos, and this is gonna be a great car to showcase what one of our True North turbos can do on Canadian soil. This has the potential to be Canada's fastest drag and drive car, and on top of that, also has the potential to be Canada's fastest street car. Now, if you think you've seen this car before, you might have. I think it was called the White Devil if you look it up on the internet. It was a big block nitrous car before. It's now a Coyote turbo car. Now, it wasn't a street car before. And that's kind of why the car is here in my possession right now, is that we need to finish the stuff that makes it a street car. Now, the car does run on methanol. It does have a mechanical fuel pump for the methanol over here. And it does have a little tiny radiator. So this would be good if you wanted to just fire it up, bring it down the track, drive back to the pits, cool it down. But you would literally get zero distance in a drag and drive with that setup. So part of the conditions of buying the car were that an additional fuel cell in the back for pump gas. There is a radiator down there on the bottom for those long drives. And the swirl pot is there. And then the addition of a second seat in there as well. This car is very, very light. I can't give you the exact number on how light it is. I do have scales here. I can scale it. I will scale it, but those are going to remain secret for now. Steel roof and quarters are needed for a lot of classes. This one's carbon. So carbon roof, carbon quarters, nothing to the doors, nothing to the chassis. All the bars are like the minimum that they need to be. These don't even look like the factory frame rails. They'll look like just, you know, inserted frame rails. But I know the #1 goal for this car was to set the Rowdy radial record on sick week, which is currently like 460s in the 8th mile on a 235 rear tire. We think we can do better. Like the chassis and everything was built super clean in this car. There's the stainless line that goes to the mechanical pump there. Nice fancy engine that hasn't been run before. I did see that it had Frankenstein heads on it. You can see up in there somewhere. Power glide transmission. It's like a bolt together converter in there. Carbon drive shaft. Nice 9-inch rear end back here. There's the radiator setup. Looks like it should be pretty good. 275 rear tire on the back. You know what? Overall, this is actually very, very clean chassis. Looks like they started with like a clean rust-free body and then they did absolute perfect stuff. Like, I want to say that this is like a back half kit back here. The lighting is so trash, but it looks like these frame rails are totally aftermarket. I just weighed it, as you can tell. It's light. It's very light. It's like if you took my car and then took a bunch of weight out of it, that's what it's like. Like a lot of weight. Like, almost cut my car in half. We somehow have to figure out how to put an alternator in this thing because it doesn't have one right now. And obviously you need one for a drag and drive. The only problem is the factory alternator will not fit in here anymore because the rack has been moved and the steering rack actually goes to where the factory alternator would be. This side you can't put an alternator because that's where the mechanical fuel pump is. And then this is in the way and that is in the way. So we're gonna have to do some moving in order to fit a big alternator, kind of like this one in there somewhere. Now, the addition of the tank in the back means there has to be a firewall between the tank and the driver, basically. So we've got to build a firewall in the back. We've also got to patch up these floor panels. I believe that some of these are already made, cut up to here. So we're gonna have to fill in the gap here as well. I don't think I showed you inside the car yet, but It is on a Dominator. A lot of the wiring's already been done, but there's a lot of wiring that hasn't already been done at the same time. So some of the wiring's got to be done. That's not up to me. I'm not really that good at wiring. But the seats do need to be mounted in there, and that's something that I can handle. The battery also gets mounted back behind this seat on this side. As you can see, it does have the funny car cage in it. It's a 25.5, which should be updated to 25.3. But it does have all the bare minimums in the back here. And then a cool addition to this car is there is a fire suppression. None of the hoses are run, so we do have to run those. I haven't run one before, but it does look pretty straightforward. We just gotta figure out where we need to put the hoses to go to the fire suppression. That's a big dash, holy. We also picked up this little electric go-kart that like is super duper slow and runs on dual batteries, but we're gonna upgrade it for Sully. So that'll be a different video. And then the only other thing we gotta do is move those shock canisters from underneath that bar, probably to like on top of it or on top up top somewhere, but we'll 3D print some brackets and use some hose clamps. That'll work out fine. So I'm a little bit low on energy today. I'm probably just gonna ponder where I wanna put the alternator in this thing, maybe start pulling some stuff off and, you know, start seeing where things can go, where things can fit. There's not a lot of room because the mod motor is very, very girthy. It's a very girthy motor. Makes a lot of power, but there's 4 camshafts in there. That's why it makes so much power. Just the VE is very efficient. The volumetric efficiencies, very efficient. Anyways, we've always wanted a Coyote. We've got one in here now. Not my Coyote, but I feel like I'm gonna be a part of it, especially once I put some work into it. So it's gonna be, you know, super duper fun. Crazy, there's still methanol in here. We're just gonna pop these oil lines off real quick. Whether there's oil in them or not, I don't know. But we need to move this bracket just to see if we can put an alternator over here. I feel like the alternator is going to be the biggest task, which is why I want to start with it first. The Clearview thing is actually a pretty cool unit. Dang, just like that, I started tinkering and before you knew it, we just had an alternator on here. Basically, just bolted itself on. I had this ICT billet bracket here. That worked out fine. I had to use the lathe for the spacers here, and then I made this plate on the arc droid. I kind of just traced out the other plate and then plotted it. But we cut out a steel plate to bolt to the aluminum motor plate. That way we could, you know, basically either weld or I just tap the plate right now for these bolts, and it seems to be working fine. Like it's in there. It flexes a little tiny bit, but we're also gonna add an adjuster on there. And you know what? I think it's gonna work. That's a big ass turbo. It is a forced induction turbo on there. We will be putting one of our True North turbos on there. It'll basically just bolt in place for that one because we do make a GT55 frame style turbo. And yeah, like 3,000 horse. Now, because we don't really ever stop, we're over here at the other garage. We've got the 57 Beetle, Goku, my 1,500 horsepower car, and the Hemi Fox. I haven't touched this one in a while. Twin turbo, 5.7 Hemi, stick shift. It's a work in progress. Actually, I'd be able to put that on Colby's car for now. But today we've got to take our True North turbo down here, and we're actually gonna give this one to Nick. He's gonna take it, he's gonna do a couple things to it. We're gonna do some back-to-back testing with it. See if we can upgrade it a little bit, make a little bit more power out of this unit, and then I'll get it back. So I've been debating going GT55. It's a pretty big motor, but then I'm at the risk of breaking the motor at the same time. So I don't know. I don't know. Didn't take the Beetle out all year. It needs a throttle cable. It needs an oil change. We just have no time to touch it. Our summer season is basically like 3 months, and you have to do everything you want to do within that 3 months. All the racing, all the conventions, just enjoying the summer, plus building, keeping a YouTube channel up, and then having the garage like 20 minutes away from the other garage, like the other house. It makes it tough to get this out sometimes. So anyways, pull this turbo off, give that to Nick, and then head on to our next task for the day, which you'll see after this. Sorry, my old friend. Sorry. Next stop on our journey, our RX-7. So it's over here because I don't have any room in my garage right now. Matt's getting it ready for the next 12-hour endurance race. I don't think I'm going to attend it. I just feel really burnt out, and I don't think that's something that I want to put myself through because it's like this weekend. If you guys remembered, in our last endurance race, we lost the transmission. So we went from a Series 2 RX-7 transmission to this is an RX-8 transmission. So it's a 6-speed now. The only thing is I've got to build a transmission bracket for it. Obviously, Murphy doesn't have the tools over here, so I'm going to get under there, get some measurements, try and figure out something at home. And make something at home? I don't know. Anyways, I can't do much over here because Murphy doesn't have the tools that I have at my house, and I need the car at my house, but the Fox is at my house. You can see where it's going. I just need a shop, man. Anyways, I'm gonna get underneath there. I drove all the way home and forgot the camera here, so now I'm back again. Idiot Kyle. All right, this is the old transmission mount from the RX-7. It will work. It just needs dimensionally a couple different things. So it needs to be 1.5 inches higher on both of the mounts. So we need to drop the whole mount 1.5 inches down. And then we've got to make a plate that just extends it backwards further because the new transmission mounts further back. So I'm just gonna write down some numbers here, go in on Fusion 360, build a couple of plates, cut them out on the Arc Droid, and then we'll weld it all together and you'll see what it looks like. All right, I got everything cut out on the Arc Droid. I made 2 extra tabs. I'm gonna take a piece of angle iron and I'm just gonna put it from here up to here and then here up to here and weld it together. That way I know exactly where these 2 mounts were and I can use that as my template for when I make this bigger. Basically what I needed to do is I needed to drop the transmission mount 1.5 inches, but if I drop it 1.5 inches, because this one's not like vertical, it's at an angle, I need these 2 distances to still be the same. So this, if I make a plate here, it's gonna replicate what's on the car already in the body. So then when I make my taller mounts for this, I know it just has to line up to these plates that I'm making right now. It doesn't make sense right now, but it will once I do it. So what I'm trying to say is basically like this. And that's gonna hold our positioning. So just tack weld that in place, remove that and start building. Something like that. Now when I remove my vice grips, they're kind of tight actually. See what I mean? This piece is kind of, where the bolts need to be. Smart Kyle. Wow, Gene has a beard.
Here I am.
What do you think about how big that turbo was over there?
That's a pretty big turbo.
Fist it. You're just a fist mommy now.
Wait.
I totally forgot that I was filming this. This is what the mount looks like now. We raised this side 1.5 inches, and then we raised this side to just make the bottom part level. And then we added this piece right here, and that's what the transmission now bolts into. Simple solutions. To be honest, I don't even know if it's gonna fit, but that's not up to me to find out. I've totally been jumping around all over the place. This is something for the formula cart. So behind the scenes right now, woo, that's why you're subscribed to the second channel, behind the scenes stuff. This is most of a 3D printed seat. So we're gonna use this as a mold and then fiberglass over it. It's not quite the exact form that needs to fit my body because I don't know how to do that in Fusion 360, but this was a great learning experience. I think once we get this all together and all the pieces printed and like fused together, I can just use like Play-Doh or something to make the extra little bits that I need. So good starting point, behind the scenes, cool, great. What I'm gonna try and do now, because I don't think that our plate is really thick enough, it might be. So what we're doing right now is there's probably 3 threads that these grab onto, and I just tap this plate. It's a 1/4 inch plate, so you know what, it should be enough, but I'm gonna entertain the idea of, because this almost fits in here, that what if I thread this piece of pipe right here and then weld this onto the back side of that plate and then give it a couple extra threads. This might be really stupid. Is this even gonna work? I don't know. It's gonna make me feel better though, probably. I made threads in there. Not many, but I mean, not deep. And the reason I'm trying to consider this versus, just I bought some nuts is that this plate like basically is flat against this plate right here. And if we welded a nut to the backside, that this nut would just, you know, would just hit. I could weld the nut to the front side probably, but I was thinking that like if these holes are big enough in here that I could just slide the whole, this piece through that hole and then weld it in there. It would need to be slightly bigger than what it is right now. So we did put the nuts on the front side of the plate, which means our spacers are now a little bit too long. So I've got to cut all our spacers the height of the nut, then the spacer's just gonna fit on top of the nut, and then, you know, whatever the newest catchphrase is, inserts here. Now we just run through the tap through it and make sure there's a seamless transition between the threads on the plate and the threads on the nut. I did use a bolt, so I know that they do thread together before I welded it. So there's like, it might have been just slightly warpy from the welding, but run the tap through it, it's friggin' perfect now. Mint. This works awesome. I'm gonna remember this. Oh, I looked at the camera to say remember this and I lost the tap. Hello? And here's the final result. I do have to add some sort of adjuster. I'm thinking that I'm gonna add a Heim joint to one of these plates down to a bar down there, so it will pivot on this plane right here with the adjuster, so you can just like move the alternator towards or away from the pulley. I did have to cut the little nub off the engine plate here, or the cover, just so we can fit a 3-inch pulley on one of these alternators, and then we have a reverse rotation LS alternator ready to go in here. But yeah, simple little setup. Now we're just gonna have to put our Clearview oil filter somewhere in this area after, and that'll be in the next video. I've got too much to do. We've got this little cart on the floor over here. That's gonna be a cool little project. And I wanna get back to this thing. I wanna drive it before the snow comes, and the snow is coming soon. All right, one more thing before I let you guys waste the rest of your day. I did 3D print more things. I love 3D printing things. This one is in PETG, and what it does is that there's a bar up there, all the way up there where that brake line is. That's the same size as this bar right here, but essentially I printed this thing to fit on the bar and on the shock canister, and then we just need 1 or 2 hose clamps on that thing and they will be mounted. So simple little, it took me literally 90 seconds to design this in Fusion 360 and then like 3 hours to print 2 of them. And it cost me probably $2 in material. I love 3D printing. Now that you made it to the end of the video, and I know you're here, and I know that you need a turbo, blacksheepindustries.ca, True North Turbos. Go over there, get a t-shirt, get a turbo, get a wastegate, get whatever you need. blacksheepindustries.ca, link is down below in the link tree. Peace easy, get that V. I'm part owner, it helps out, go do it.